So in this clip, you have Kyle Kulinski from Secular Talk, and he's just making fun of Ben Shapiro, as Ben Shapiro claims that basically people should just use their AC with climate change.
So he's got some new thoughts for us on climate change. Now remember, guys, this is at a time when we're getting records shattered left and right. Just absolutely obliterated left and right. I mean, I don't even know. Is Phoenix still going with their record? I know that it was like, what did they have? 22 straight days of 110 degrees or more? 22. The previous...
Yeah, last I heard on that, it was 23, with a lot of those days being 118 degrees, 119 degrees.
Record was 18. They obliterated the record. And this is just one of many, right? We've seen the insane flooding in the Northeast and parts of New York. There's been a list of wild and extreme weather events. The water off the coast of southern Florida was close to 100 degrees.
There are a lot of headlines right now about how hot it is outside. I know. It's hot outside. You know what I can do about that? Zero things. Thank God we have this thing called air conditioning. It's awesome. You know, it's a great cure for it being super duper hot outside. Being a first world country. Amazing. It works out tremendously well because it turns out that if you have a really solid energy grid and you have the capacity to turn on that AC, you're living quite comfortably these days. You know what sucks? Global poverty. You know what brings global poverty? Decarbonization.
So not only is he being smug and glib and dismissive, you know, like AC exists, so owned climate change, wrecked. Owned, bro. We got you. He's also leaning into, by the way, let's not do anything about this at all. Definitely don't, move away from carbon and fossil fuels. Definitely don't do that.
So I think Kyle brings up a good point there by basically pointing out that Ben Shapiro is indicating, like, we don't need to do anything about fossil fuels. Also wanted to add to that I wanted to add to what Kyle said. Ben saying, like, how global poverty, how that's, like, it's bad for those people. Well, he doesn't point out it's only going to get worse. Especially if action isn't taken, you're going to have people that are literally being, like, displaced throughout Malaysia and throughout areas where you have, like, flooding happening.
So not only is he being glib and saying, AC is the solution, bro, he's also saying, but definitely don't move to solar, definitely don't move to wind, definitely don't move to nuclear, definitely don't move to geothermal, definitely don't do anything you can, definitely don't have an economic revival where we get the inevitable patents in the field of green and renewable technology, where we can be the world leader in that thing and we can make tremendous amounts of money. Definitely don't do any of that.
Okay, I'm going to jump ahead to Ben talking more just about climate change.
Well, you know, it's not global warming, it's not climate change. And the reason they changed the term from global warming to climate change is because the climate, in many cases, is colder during the winters than it was before. So it's hotter during the summers and it's colder during the winters. They've called this climate weirding. But that doesn't really seem to go over all that way. So they call it climate change, which, of course, is an incredibly vague term because the climate is always changing. However, it is worth noting at this point that all of this, folks, millions will die of the heat waves that are occurring on planet. Oh, my God, the ocean is so hot during the summer in Florida. Okay, so first of all, it is hot this summer in Florida. Also, it's hot like every summer in Florida. You've been to Florida? It's really, really hot and humid. Like, I noticed when I first visited here.
So what comes to mind with this, Ben Shapiro, he's really into, like, pointing out corruption, depending on who it is. He'll talk about Hillary Clinton being corrupt, but he doesn't often talk about oil companies. He doesn't talk about oil companies and the fact that they knew that they were contributing to the earth heating up as early as the 1980s, and they tried to bury that information, and then they've tried to pay off scientists and people who work for think tanks to try and basically confuse the public. And that's what he's doing right here too. He's making it seem like climate change isn't really a thing. He's trying to say, like, oh, look at these inconsistencies. They used to say it was global warming. Now they're saying it's like climate change or climate weirding, where there's different weather patterns. That's what the scientists are saying. So my question is, if at one point, if Phoenix is in the next 10 to 20 years, if it's hitting 130 degrees, is he going to go back and correct what he said? Is he ever going to say, like, I was wrong? Is he ever going to admit, like, oh, the scientists, the 97% of climatologists who have been saying climate change is real, they were right from the beginning, and the oil companies were trying to mislead the public? Will he ever admit that? Probably not.
Several years ago, and we moved anyway because air conditioning exists.
So he's like poo-pooing the idea that people will die because of climate change. Well, I hate to tell you, Ben, but there's this thing called drought. There's this thing called famine. There's this thing called many fresh water resources running out, where we'll eventually have wars over water. There's this thing called the Middle East will at some point be uninhabitable because it's too hot. Who knows? Maybe places like Phoenix, Arizona will be uninhabitable. And they also sold a lot of their water to frickin' Saudi Arabia, by the way. Seems like a bad idea.
Okay, Kyle brings up some great points there. Again, saying that there's going to be drought, there's going to be famine, and with how it's going, that seems like a strong possibility that Phoenix and the Middle East and these places are just going to basically become so hot that no one can live there during the summer. Perhaps Phoenix, there'll be like wealthy people that have winter homes where they'll go, but if it's in the high 120s to 130s, people are not going to want to live there.
Idea, given the current place we're in. You got all these problems, and he just swats them aside. We have AC. Yeah. Well, thank you, Ben, for using your big brain. Like, I get it, dude. You're conservative. I get it. But when you're so ideological and you're so married to your politics that you just disregard or ignore or swat aside empirical facts about reality, I mean, you can't call that anything but dishonest. You can't.
I just want to say I appreciate Kyle for being unapologetic in his views, that oftentimes you have these loudmouths like Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder types. I feel like Kyle Kulinski is a really good like counterbalance to that, because he's confident, he's unapologetic in what he says, he has a lot of knowledge, he's quick on his feet. I think that there really needs to be more people on the left that are like Kyle Kulinski, that can basically go toe-to-toe against Ben Shapiro types. And also, mentioning Crowder, the guy's an absolute clown. If you didn't see the news article that was released recently, showing that he was like exposing himself to all of his employees. Like, he was always just a loudmouth. He was always a jackass. Just wanted to show this article as well. So this is from the Young Turks. This was an older article from 2018. So it's saying Ben Shapiro owns the libs, but who owns him? So this is just highlighting that basically Ben Shapiro, he has had a lot of like GOP donors, fund groups that like really promote him, like Turning Point USA, for example. And so this is highlighting just some of his ties. So notice you have Ferris Wilks and Dan Wilks right here. And so they have put a ton of money into the Daily Wire. So that's Shapiro's group. And these are huge, like, fracking brothers. And if you look at some of the people that are also putting money into, like, Turning Point USA that really promotes him, you have, like, Foster Frace. That's, from my memory, that's a big oil guy right there. You have the Koch brothers pouring money into Young America's Foundation. That's tied to him. You have the Mercers pouring money into Breitbart that is promoting Shapiro. So when he tries to basically indicate like climate change isn't a big deal, just understand who he's being paid by. Do I think Ben Shapiro is better than Sean Hannity because he's sometimes a little bit critical of Trump? Yes. But do I still think that he is a political hack and that he's super partisan? Yeah, he definitely is.